Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me here this evening, and I'm so honored to share a stage with these inspiring and innovative individuals. I think we're in for quite a treat tonight. I'd like to start my talk tonight by sharing a story about my mom. So this is my family in 1989, and in 1989 was when my mom made the decision to immigrate to the US. And when she made the decision to come here, she didn't know English. She didn't really understand the culture. She didn't have much money. She didn't have much of an education. And she actually didn't have any friends when she came here. But somehow, she knew she would be fine. And she knew that she would make it. And she did make it. And she knew that she would make it because throughout her life, she was comfortable with discomfort. And that's what I want to talk about this evening. I believe you can do almost anything if you embrace the concept of comfort with discomfort. Now, there's a lot of types of discomforts, but I'll focus on 3 in particular. First is discomfort with ambiguity. Next is discomfort with failure. And finally, discomfort with change. So let's start with discomfort with ambiguity. So this was me. My first job out of college was with Deloitte Consulting as a technology consultant. And my first project was actually right here in Atlanta for the Home Depot at their headquarters, implementing an order management system. And at the time, I knew nothing about the retail industry. I didn't know what an order management system was, and I don't think I even stepped foot in a Home Depot store, to be honest, prior to that project. And as a consultant, I was constantly stepping into ambiguous situations. With every new project, I found myself having to learn a new industry, learning new technologies, learning to work with different people. I was often walking into situations where there was confusion and miscommunication and just uncertainty. So in other words, I had to get comfortable with ambiguity. And I'm so thankful that that was my first job out of college. And this is my son, Miles. He's, shameless plug, but he's 2.5 years old, and I wonder what his first job will be. The US Department of Labor estimates that 65% of students today will be doing jobs that don't even exist yet. And I know our future is unknown, but I would argue that it's more ambiguous than ever. And part of that reason is due to the accelerating growth in technology. If you guys think back to 2006, about 10 years ago, Airbnb didn't even exist at that time. And today, in 2016, they reached 1 million rooms for reservation. And now, to put that in perspective, Hilton Hotels was founded in 1919. And this year, they just reached 700,000 rooms. Today, the world's largest taxi company owns no taxis. The world's most popular media platform owns no content. And in the last year, we've been hearing about self-driving cars, with Google and Tesla throwing their names into the mix, and Uber recently launching a small fleet of self-driving cars in Pittsburgh. We've also been hearing about augmented reality. For those of you guys that play Pokemon Go or have kids that play Pokemon Go, that technology is in their hands or in their pockets. And in Florida, there's actually a company called Magic Leap that raised $1.4 billion to develop what they're calling mixed reality, where virtual things interact and are responsive to the real world. We've been hearing a lot about machine learning and how machine learning is addressing less routine and more cognitive things, like the practice of medicine or the creation of the arts, and even beating the best Go game winner, complex game like Go, beating him. So as educators, parents, and mentors, we really have to help our kids get comfortable with ambiguity. This is imperative, I think, for our kids' futures. Next is the discomfort with failure. So I live in Silicon Valley, where the motto is fail fast, fail often. And we embrace this, entrepreneurs, investors, innovators, we embrace this because we recognize that failure is an opportunity for growth. In fact, there's brain research that shows that when you fail, your brain has synapses that fire. Joe Bowler, who's a professor at Stanford University, has shown that when you make a mistake, your brain sparks and grows. And even if you don't recognize that you've made the mistake, it's a time of struggle and the brain is challenged. And during that challenge, your brain grows. And in fact, your brain grows more when you fail than when you succeed. Now, I think that's important when we think about a growth mindset or when we talk about a growth mindset with our students. And when I look at our students in our schools today, there hasn't been a generation that's more right answer addicted and more afraid of risk and more afraid of failure. And perhaps part of the reason is they're following a path to success that we've laid out for them. And perhaps we need to rethink the path to success. It's no longer guaranteed that you get good grades, you go to college, and you'll get a good job. And students today won't be spending 20 to 30 years at the same job or the same company, and time again in their lives, they're going to have to rethink their own path to success. And I know that this is really hard. When I was graduating from business school, I had to make a decision. Do I go back to Deloitte, where I was known, I knew I would be comfortable, I was going to get paid well, I knew I could do well and succeed, or do I join a 5-person startup that was trying to disrupt public education, which sounded so exciting and so meaningful to me, but was a place where my role was undefined. The market need that we were trying to address needed to be validated. Our product was non-existent. We had one customer, and our office space was actually this taped-off space in a large room that we shared with 4 other startups. And in hindsight, I chose that. And in hindsight, it was a really tough decision, but I'm so glad I did that. Because I learned more from that experience than I did from business school. And that's the reality. The reality is that the path to success is not linear. The path to success is multidimensional. Today, there are new ways to acquire skills. General Assembly is a company that is offering relevant skills for the new kinds of jobs today. And in the Bay Area, there's a ton of coding boot camps, like Dev Boot Camp, where for people who want to launch a new career in coding or in engineering, they could take a 10-week intensive boot camp, and they're getting jobs. And even top universities like University of Michigan, MIT, and Columbia just recently launched MicroMasters, which are small, focused courses to give people a MicroMasters for about $1,000. Today, there are new ways to gain experience. Take Startup Weekend, for example. It's where people gather for a weekend and pitch ideas and form teams, and through working on those ideas in the teams, they're gaining industry experience, they're gaining new business experience, they're gaining new technical experience. And even if those teams don't succeed, they're learning from the failures, and it's an opportunity to gain experience. There's also new ways to show your experience and show your skills. On LinkedIn, they have micro-credentials that you can put on your profile. There's also ways to upload your portfolio of work and also write an article to share your expertise. And in a world that's more ambiguous than ever, we must help our students get comfortable with failure. We must help them get comfortable stepping off the linear path to success. For every path to success involves risk, failure, and growth. Okay, finally, I'll address discomfort with change. And I think we all recognize how important it is to be comfortable with change that's being put on you, right? The world's constantly changing. So what I'd actually like to talk about is being comfortable making change, being comfortable challenging the status quo. A personal hero of mine is Bryan Stevenson. He challenges the status quo on so many levels. Bryan Stevenson is a lawyer who founded the Equal Justice Initiative. And the Equal Justice Initiative challenges our criminal justice system. It challenges the biases against the poor and against the minorities. Equal Justice Initiative to date has saved 125 wrongly accused men from the death penalty. And Bryan and his team has successfully challenged the practice of sentencing children under 18 to death or life in prison without parole, which was the status quo. And as Bryan Stevenson says, if you want to make change in the world, you have to be willing to be uncomfortable. And our generation, Generation Z, this next generation students want to make change. They want to challenge the status quo. You know, this generation is the post-9/11 generation. The earliest memories are the global recession, the first election of an African-American president, 17-year-old Malala Yousafzai winning the Nobel Peace Prize. You know, this generation is these are digital natives that are more interconnected than any other generation. And according to market research, they are culturally and socially aware. You know, they care about issues like poverty, like justice, like poverty and justice and equity, which are some really big issues. And they're activists. And this generation is the most racially and ethnically diverse generation in US history. In fact, they're going to be the last American generation that's majority white. This generation also has entrepreneurship in their DNA. Another market research showed that 60% of high school seniors want to be entrepreneurs rather than an employee. And they're also feeling pressure at a young age to have professional experience. Yet, you know, with things like DIY education and crowdsourcing at their fingertips, starting their own business has never been easier. And if you ask them, they intend to change the world. So really, I think we better get comfortable with change. Now, getting comfortable with change, with ambiguity, with failure, it takes practice. And it can be as simple as taking a different path home tonight, or asking for a discount at a store, or walking up to a big group of people you don't know and introducing yourself. And when I think about my son, Miles, and how I might instill comfort with discomfort in him, I'm actually inspired by our very own Bo Adams. Bo has a concept he calls father-son-based learning, which is kind of like an adventure-based learning where it really embodies being comfortable with discomfort. And I love Bo's story of his oldest son. He says when his oldest son was 5 years old, he decided to take him to the MARTA station. And that was the last decision that Bo made for the next 8 hours. Imagine that. His son, his 5-year-old son, had to figure out how are we going to get a ticket to go into the station, to get on the train? Whom do I talk to for advice, for information? Where are we going to go? How are we going to get there? What are we going to do when we get there, right? So think about that. Think about a time when you've had the opportunity to get comfortable with discomfort. And think about a time when you've given that opportunity to your child. Finally, I started this with a story of my mom, and I'll end it with her. Today, she's 63 years old, and as I'm standing right here, she is in the south of France. She's in the south of France, traveling by herself, making new friends, learning French, and as you can see, taking selfies and posting them on Instagram. Yeah. And every day, my mom inspires me to embrace comfort with discomfort. And tonight, I hope you guys are all inspired to do the same. Thank you.